everybody to the Board of Selectmen's July 31st, 2023 meeting. Following guidance issued by Governor Baker in 2020 regarding open meeting law, this meeting is being held remotely, and individuals wishing to participate can do so utilizing the Zoom link that was provided in the agenda, as well as they can connect via telephone, and that information is also on the agenda. So I will start off by taking a roll call vote of the Board of Selectmen. Robin Hunter here.
Bob Swingett here.
John Jeffries here.
The next item of business today will be citizens' comments. So are there any citizens' comments? There being none, we can go to the first item on the agenda. And this evening we have an esteemed guest, our chairman of the Capital Budget Committee, Barry Goldman, who is going to review the 2024 capital budgets.
Thanks, Robin. And it's a pleasure to be here, especially amongst all my fellow capital budget folks. Robin's on the committee and Bob is my predecessor, and John has been always quite helpful in our due diligence process, especially with the ambulance, with all of the due diligence that we did with that. So I'll give you a high-level rundown of where we are with FY24. We're basically in the middle of our due diligence. And we look, as Robin knows, right now, we look for a compelling story and reason to issue a recommendation to the Warrant Committee and the Board of Selectmen and the residents. So we do extensive due diligence. We expect to be finished possibly by late February or early March. But we still have a lot of things to go through. So we'll be having at least one meeting a week until we're finished. And I sent out to everybody a model of previous years starting in FY18 and going up to FY24. So could somebody put that on the screen and we can take a look at that?
Barry, this is Carl. So we have your model, but we haven't figured out how Mona can get it, or I could get it up on the screen. So
Somebody has to share screen, I guess.
Yeah, I could do it for you. Just hold on.
Yeah, I think you have it, Robin. I sent it to you.
Yep.
Is it up now?
Yep.
Yeah.
There we
There we
go. All right.
Okay. So this is kind of an interesting year because our average going back most years is somewhere under $500,000 of requests and approvals. And this year we're at a total of $4,403,000. So we're running about 8 times the requests of normal. And the outside column is the one that per department. So if you look at, for example, the fire department, they're $1,354,000, which is comprised of a number of things that have reached their useful lives, including one fire truck, which is $990,000. And we can expect to see more fire trucks coming from them in later years. The highway department is looking for $1,810,000, and that's just below, spread over a number of projects and 2 trucks and 1 new piece of equipment. The big project there is the Claybrook Road reconstruction. We may be able to get some grant money to offset that. I understand it's been earmarked, but there's no guarantee that we get that money. So we have to commit to it. If we get the grant back from the state, then it'll offset whatever the amount of the grant is. And then going down below, the next big one is.
And then, Carl, do we know, has the full $1 million been earmarked, or is it something less than that?
We don't know that yet.
Okay.
I thought it was the full $1 million, but I may be wrong about that.
I'll check with the DPW director and let everybody know.
Okay.
So we've done quite well with earmarks in the past, but you never know because there's a new governor. So that may be this may be more highly scrutinized than in the past. And then going down the region is 704,000, and their information has just been submitted to us. So we have to really undertake the due diligence. You see the X's there. That's the library, and we originally thought it was going to be 50 or 100,000, and the engineering firm came in with a bid of just to do the engineering of 200,000 and a cost of maybe $1 million. So we're going to re-engineer that project. So that's why we're just at the preliminary numbers. So we haven't been able to set anything aside on that. And then the schools are, the region especially is higher this year at $704,700. So the three.
And Barry, it's important to mention that that is only Dover's share of the capital that the region is doing. Like the full project is double that. Our share is about 52% of the total cost.
Right. Yeah, our share is 53% of the total cost. Yeah,
right.
Something like that. 53.95, I think it is.
You know, the region may be able to use some of their excess and deficiency account to offset that, but at this juncture, they're not sure how much of that is going to be available. So the full
Right.
amount.
Right. So we usually encourage them to make as many changes as possible and to defer what they can within reason, and also to use some of their own funds. And sometimes their requests have dropped to zero, quite honestly. So the total of the outstanding requests right now are $3,868,000 from just those 3 departments, which is about 87% of the total. So the others are fairly small. So why is this so much this year? Well, we have a confluence of properties, both vehicles and equipment and real estate that are 20 years plus old. So the time has come generally to consider replacing them. And this is just really the beginning, because this is going to continue for several years. These 3 departments are now projecting an average expense over the next 5 years of $1 million plus each. So we're going to be $3 million to $4 million each year projected forward. And Carla and I are getting together next week to start to work on projections.
Right, and Barry, I think it's important to note that many of these projections, especially those relating to the buildings, were always in the report in the outlying years. And one of the recommendations, capital budget had made last year when we looked at all this capital replacement that was coming down the pike, was for the town to consider putting more into the capital reserve account to help smooth that out. But
Right.
what's happened this year is there are a number of items that weren't in those projections, like the Claybrook Road repair for $1 million. That just wasn't in any of the projections.
Right.
We had some pieces of equipment, but not as many replacement trucks as we have today. So, you know, clearly we've, as capital budget, have gone back to all the departments, and we're really trying to prioritize these asks, because this is a huge amount and it's coming on top of, you know, an excess or an excess for the Carroll Community Center that also needs to be funded. So we really need to look at all these things, figure out how to prioritize them, and we're going to have to spread these asks out over the coming years, because I don't know that we can justify spending this full $4.4 million this year.
Right, absolutely. I think that'll be the next subject will be what kind of resources do we want to put toward replacement of, in some cases, vital assets, and what are our priorities? In many cases, we're deciding on fire trucks that are quite aged, and there's certainly plenty of DPW trucks that are quite aged. So those seem to be at a point where we have to either replace them now or within when I say now, within the next 5 years or so. And going forward, the numbers will be quite high and increasing all the time because of inflation, particularly in heavy equipment. So one of the things we're trying to do is use grants as much as possible. So we filed a grant on for green communities for $500,000 for the Carroll Community Center, and we were awarded that. But to get that, we had to agree to a moratorium for 2 years. So we can't go back for a 2-year period for green community grants, but there's other grants that we can go after, and I think we have to remain particularly diligent. Also, we are looking at saving operating funds by electrifying a lot of the energy uses in town, which we've pretty much done in the Protective Service Building, and we're now undertaking that in the library, which will become totally electric, and we'll be removing the oil. So what happens is our capital expenditure may go up, but our operating expenses should decrease considerably when we.
Yeah, but Barry, that's a lot of money up front and a lot of savings in the back end, right?
Yeah, correct. I mean, that's
Okay,
what.
so there's two pieces here. I mean, you guys have said it, you laid it out. You said the challenge for us is over the next, 5 years, Barry?
Right.
That we have to prioritize the spend over the next 5 years and try to smooth the curve of this increase in demand, right? The funding of it is separate. How we fund it it comes second. First, we have to agree that this is what we need. This is the priority. This is why it's the priority. And this is how we should be phasing it out over time. The second question is, how do we fund it? For me, the challenge is, I mean, I've been involved with the town for a fairly long time, and this is the first time we sort of had this confluence of demand, from the capital side. We've had some big projects like schools, but that's pretty straightforward. You borrow and you build a school. We're here, and it looks like, you're right, it looks like you got 4 million, 5 million, 3 million, 3 million going out over the next 3 or 4 years. So there's, the only way to fund that, once we agree priorities and timing, is borrowing. Now, you can offset some of those costs with grants, but ultimately somebody's going to have to pay the piper here, because the equipment is old. The equipment needs, we've deferred maintenance on some of this stuff, but perhaps a bit too long. And now we're going to have to find a financing way to get this stuff done, assuming that it is critical need, right?
Right, right.
So
And
we
that's part
so
of
we're
our due
telling-
diligence.
Yeah. So we're telling the town, the whole point of this is to tell the town not only what's going on here, right, which you've talked about and articulated it in 3 major departments. And I'm assuming that that same spend is going out into the future, because fire trucks have to be replaced and highway trucks have to be replaced. And
That's
then,
right. Basically, the entire departments are asking to be replaced.
right. And you still have the 1970 heavyweight trucks?
Exactly, 1975 and a 1979.
Yeah.
I've suggested we open a museum for these.
Good. So I think that's the point here is to bring this in front of the board, hopefully in front of the town, so that people begin to get a sense of the demand for funds to replace all these town assets that are well beyond their useful lives.
Right. And I think there could be a relationship between how we finance it, and because the town is used to pay as you go. And it's pretty obvious now that we're not going to be able to do that.
Correct. And that's exactly why you're here tonight. This is not business as usual.
Right.
Well, but this shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody. We knew this was happening. I mean, we knew the large, we knew 3 roofs needed to be replaced. We knew some of this large capital was out there. I think the thing that did take us somewhat by surprise was suddenly the sense of urgency to replace both the fire department fleet and the DPW fleet, whereas before it was a much more pragmatic approach.
Right.
So,
right.
we need to look at all these things and see clearly, we always knew the highway department trucks were aging. And in hindsight, we should have pushed to replace some of them earlier. But now we have an older fleet, and we will have higher maintenance costs, and we'll have to, be pragmatic about replacing the trucks.
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge. Is the region or the replacing roofs, or is it the air ducts?
So they did replace, they replaced the roof. Now they're replacing the air handlers.
Right.
And then next year, Chickering's replacing the air handlers. But all these things, we knew these were coming down. These have been on our radar for a while.
Yeah, I think the area of greatest unknown at this, now we're uncovering all of these things. We can bring them to the table and we can intelligently discuss them. But the biggest area I think that we still have unknowns are potential infrastructure problems. Because I've heard from the DPW, the highway department, that we have to spend a fair amount on culverts. And some of those culverts have been left for over 20 years. And we have water flowing through them and deteriorating streets. So a lot of those culverts will have to be replaced, and we have placeholders in future years for as much as $500,000 a year for culverts. We just don't know what those are going to cost.
Well, one of the things, Barry, where Kevin came to us last week at last meeting and gave us a presentation with regards to a mapping procedure that we're undertaking for specifically culverts. And
Right.
what that's going to do is identify all the culverts, all the Gabriel weirs, all of the water flow through systems that are around the town, which we know that there are a lot, and we don't know definitively how many there are. And we don't know definitively how many are actually on town property. There's many that are going to be found to be on private property. So that what we're all saying is we're going to have a lot more knowledge. We're going to have a lot more specific data to be able to determine how much of this we're going to have to pay for, how much of it we can apply for grants for, and then specifically with some of these capital projects, Barry, streets and infrastructure, how long we can defer them for. Some
Right.
of them can be a long time. Some of them have to be done immediately. So that's going to be part of this challenge. I will say one other thing, Barry, with regards to fleet changing, and that's I was on the Finance and Budget Committee in Wellesley when we looked at this, and Mark Waldman will tell you about it because he had a lot of experience with me at the same time. When we looked at vehicle replacements in Wellesley, what we found was the new vehicles sucked compared to the old ones.
Yeah.
That's a technical term. And Wellesley used to use a 1960 something a ladder truck that would constantly replace the at then $1 million new aerial truck that couldn't even fit in the fire station when they bought it. They literally had to reconfigure the fire station because the truck was too big.
I think we did one of those in Dover.
Yeah. Well, the point was the new trucks were horrible, and they kept going back to the old trucks. There's that, right? There's the devil you know versus the devil you don't know.
Right. And I think also the departments, particularly the highway department and the fire department, they both really maintain their equipment.
Yes.
I mean, these trucks are for this age, they're in magnificent shape. I mean, they couldn't be better for this kind of age. I think part of the question is, what does it cost to maintain them? You know, what are repair costs, and where do they get the parts for these
Right.
older trucks?
Right.
So we used to use a graph and take a look at what the model would be, assuming that you defer the purchase of a new vehicle and pay the extra, knowing that you're going to have extra costs to maintain and repair. There's a certain point where obviously it gets to be too difficult to do, or the truck has too much downtime. It's not practical to keep it. But I must say that a lot of these vehicles are still running beautifully and maintained perfectly. So
that might give you a little wiggle room.
Yeah, that's a benefit. That's right. It gives us some wiggle room. Exactly. I think the one fire truck that we're talking about this year for $990,000 is difficult to keep. But Carl and I talked about today possibly bringing in some more expertise to give us a study on fire trucks, because it's hard to understand. There's over 10 pieces of equipment, and it's hard to understand exactly what they have to be used for. They have very specific uses. And is it possible to have a truck that has multi-use capability? I mean, we don't know that at this point. So we may need some help in that kind of area.
You know, Barry, one of the things that also we have looked at on a broader scale, bigger picture, is the whole mutual aid concept and how the mutual aid concept is really being rethought specifically because every town is faced with the same dilemma that we're looking at. You know, Sherburne's got 10 trucks, we've got 10 trucks, Medfield's got 15, Westwood's got 20, whatever the number is. Each one of those towns abuts our town and is available when we call mutual aid, right? We
Right.
know how all those things work. And so what we're trying to do and what's being done at the Massachusetts municipal level is some of these towns looking at a more common, if you will, that's probably not the right word, but approach to the mutual aid because of the budgetary constraints that small towns have to replace these vehicles. They're not used that often, but when they are used, they're needed.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, it would be nice to think that we could do more in mutual aid and reduce the amount of equipment. I did bring this up the other day to Bob when we were discussing this, and that is sometimes insurance companies rate the risk based upon how far you are from a fire station. So I think that we have to take some of that into consideration. I'm sure the fire department would bring that up as well.
Yeah, I did the math, Barry, and the person in Dover that lives the furthest away from both the Dover Fire Department and the Medfield Fire Department is Robin Hunt.
Well, in that case, it's okay.
Yeah, that case, we'll be fine with that. That's a risk we're willing to take.
So Barry, before we end this, what's going on with the library?
Well, we started with an engineering firm to look at replacing the system. The system was
The
built.
heating system, the cooling, the airflow, what systems?
Well, the
cooling
entire HVAC system. It was built, I think, in 1965, whenever the library was originally built, 65 or 68, something like that. And quite honestly, it was built as if it was for a battleship. It's the most complicated system possible. So there's multiple different systems in there, including oil, and very expensive controls to replace. And there's a separate system for downstairs, and there's a separate system for upstairs. So we brought in an engineering firm, and they came back with the idea that they should replace this system with what I call a Lamborghini, top of the line, typical engineering firm decision system. And they wanted to charge $200,000, which we thought was excessive, just for their fees. And Carl and I originally thought it was going to be $30,000 to $50,000. Also, they wanted to replace the controls with another system that would cost just by itself $400,000 or $500,000. So Carl and I have been working to see if we could simplify the system with much simpler equipment without extensive controls, bring in another engineering firm that maybe is more practical, that understands how to deal with separate systems. And he's working on that right now.
Okay,
So
thank you.
we're starting basically over. We think what will happen, we'll find somebody, an engineering firm that's appropriate, and we'll probably come back with a much smaller amount for re-engineering the place. Just take out the existing, all the 3 existing systems, and put in all electric HVAC and heat pumps. So did I answer what?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, I just want to, and I want to make sure that if anybody decides to watch this, that they get a full story on all that's going on.
Well, I tend to get too enmeshed in the details, so.
Passionate is the word, Barry.
Okay. And Robin, by the way, is an expert because she's put in the same kind of distributed HVAC systems at home. So she knows what I'm talking about.
It's because Robin's house is bigger than most town buildings. So
No, it is not.
Of course. So that I would say that's about it. We'll have another report later on projecting out all these changes. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask, or you know where to find me.
Okay,
Right,
thank
you
you.
know, and Barry, looking at, what it takes to regionalize the fire department or share equipment with the DPW, it's not really a capital budget charge.
That's
I
true.
think this is, as a town, those are things we can look at. For us on capital budget, it's just making sure that the equipment is really needed and that there's parameters that we follow when things need to get replaced. And we worked really closely with the police department on that and got to a really good spot.
Right.
So I think we need to do the same with fire and the DPW and just stress that we're going to have to spread these asks out. I mean, we just can't do it all at once.
Are we frozen?
Certainly getting the $1 million or some amount for Claybrook will help tremendously, but there's still a lot of equipment that needs to get.
I'm sorry, Robin.
Somebody's frozen? I think Barry dropped.
No, he's there. He's on mute.
Ah,
I'm back now.
okay.
Okay, yeah, it would cut me off for a minute there. So if anybody has any questions, let me know. And I'll be, as I said, I'll be meeting with Carl, and we'll go to the next 5 years and project out what we think will be the requests and imminent possibilities.
Well, thank you, Barry.
Sure.
Appreciate your guidance and capital budgets.
Well, I appreciate everybody's input too. We have a lot of help.
Okay. Where are we? Oh, there we are.
Right. So the next item on our agenda is going to be presented by Carl and Bob. I believe you may be the one with most input from this board, and it's to order and assign the annual town meeting warrant articles. And Bob, I don't know, before we do this, if you think it's appropriate just for you to provide a summary of some of the work you and the moderator, and I see both the moderator and assistant moderator have been doing in connection with trying to make town meeting efficient and make it only one night.
Yeah, so I think it's better to leave Jim and Dave on mute. What do you think? So there was a small group of people who got together. Jim, Dave, myself, Carl, Barry, and Cam from the warrant committee, Carol Lisbon, and Felicia. Hope I didn't miss anybody. And the idea was to take a look at an extensive list of warrant articles that we were facing for May town meeting, as well as our procedures and approach to handling the meeting, to try to make sure that, well, the first thing was that we had all these articles. Do we think it's going to be a one night town meeting or a multiple night town meeting? And at the end of the early meetings, we thought pretty clearly that it was going to be a 2-night town meeting, and we investigated if that were the case, how we would sort of organize things. And then as we went along, we began to reach out to particularly Carol, because for the planning board had a number of items, and we wanted to see if there were ways to either segment some of this stuff between 2 meetings, and that discussion led into changes to the number of articles. And we left the last meeting, which I guess was last week, feeling a little bit better about being able to do the town's business in one night in May. And so I think it was a terrific effort on the part of the people involved. Lots of thoughtful discussion, a couple of jokes Dave tried to pull on us, but we wouldn't let him. And I think we came out at a pretty good place. So I think that's what Carl's going to go over.
Okay, well, thank you. Dave or Jim, do you guys have anything you want to add?
No, I think Bob summarized it very well, and thank you to Bob and Dave and Felicia and Barry and Carl. We appreciate all their help, and particularly the planning board and Carol in helping us try to figure out what we could do now and what we could do at a subsequent meeting. Very much appreciated. So I'm pretty confident now that we'll get it done in one night. Of course, the better plans of mice and men. We'll see.
So I assume the way the warrant is outlined right now is based upon your work and recommendations on ordering. Is that right?
So I have I'm looking at the worksheet that we used back on 127. And so there were a couple of
Is that
things.
the one in the package or no?
I don't know if it's the same
Yeah.
one.
Yes,
It's the same
it
one.
is.
So the first, I think the major thing that happened was there were a number of amendments that were withdrawn. So you could see planning board, there were 1, 2, 3, looks like 4 items that were withdrawn that pertain to the sort of the zoning regulations around the village center. And that just took out a fair amount of what we thought would be lengthy discussions to be had. The caveat there, or the asterisk on that, was Carol made the point that these issues need to be considered and voted on in calendar year 23, and is looking to do that in a fall town meeting. So that's just being deferred to the fall. Then we talked about, and then we talked about using the consent agenda for a number of items, so that we could make one motion, cover a broader set of options. And I think that's 6, 7, and 8. And I think there was a slew down at the bottom that would in that we could talk to, but certainly 6, 7, and 8 we thought were consent agenda items. There was discussion around the appropriation to the conservation fund, whether or not that should be or shouldn't be, and I believe it was going to stand as a standalone. There was a question about Article 17, if it should be in this May town meeting or it should be moved to the June meeting for the community center. That was an open item. And then we get down to, there was a series of discussions about general bylaw articles, about whether or not they should or shouldn't be town a consent agenda. But before we get there, I think there was also item 21 has been withdrawn, I believe. And then, so we were not sure about, at least I was not sure, and Jim or Dave can speak about these, the numbers 22 through 26. I'm not sure which of those, if any, would be included in a consent agenda, but they're essentially pretty straightforward articles in any event. Is that about right, Jim, Dave, Carl?
Yeah, I mean, the only one that I would probably not put in the consent agenda is, oh, never mind. I thought it was Article 5, but I see it's just the general bylaw.
Yeah.
I personally think the consent agendas really help town meeting, and they work really well. And I certainly have gotten a lot of really positive feedback by, for us doing that.
Well, yeah, they're just housekeeping items.
Right.
And they come up every year and it's pretty, pro forma to sort of move these items along. And I think the past experience has borne that out. But if you get down to the general bylaw articles, I don't know if there's any in there. Appropriate appointment of a wiring inspector, term of office for constables. I mean, I just finance committee eliminate a couple of places. I'm assuming that shouldn't be in the consent agenda. I don't know. And then amend general bylaw for committee membership of the capital budget committee. And that's just to replace the long range planning attendee
Right.
with a, so, to me, it seems to me they're worth voting on and explaining. So I don't really have a strong opinion on that.
No, I mean, I would suggest warrant Article 3, just the revolving funds amounts, those are a standard amount.
Yeah.
Perhaps what, Jim, you might be able to do there is read those line items for the revolving fund in a summary like you're doing for capital budget and the operating budget.
Right.
And that would speed it up a little, Robin, but I'm not sure how much meat is on that bone.
Yeah, because I think they're statutory amounts, they're predetermined what they can be.
I believe some are. I don't know if all of them are, but
Okay.
your point is that we literally vote on the same amounts every year, and we're spending a whole lot of time on it when it could be sped up. Makes sense. The only thing that I'm not quite sure of, because we're getting into bylaws and elimination of bylaws, but any consent agenda, you have to make sure that the simple majorities are put together, the 2/3 required
Okay.
put together, and then there's that unpaid bills from the previous year at 4/5. So did I miss any others, Jim?
No, that's it. Very good.
So should we take a further stab at reallocating what we're going to do on the spreadsheets before we vote, or do you think we could vote as amended?
I mean, I'm comfortable voting as amended. I think we have general consensus, but when do we have to get this done by?
So, Madam Chair, between now and your next meeting, I'll be drafting the warrant itself. So at your next meeting, you'll be voting the warrant, which gets mailed out. So you really need to decide today on the order of the articles. So I draft them in the right order for the warrant. And let me just point out two things. Mr. Spring mentioned this. I want to make sure everybody picked up on it. What's on your list currently as 21, the amendments to the regulatory bylaw, the stormwater bylaw. So that, as of today, the working group met, and so that is going to be withdrawn.
Okay.
And that would come together, earliest would be in the fall that would be ready. And I know there was some concern that could take some time, so I think it's helpful to not have that for this town meeting. And then earlier today, Mr. Goldman and I talked about whether the board would want to move the regional school capital articles, which are currently 12 and 13, whether there was any reason to have that follow the town capital, Article 5. So that the town meeting was dealing with all the capital sort of one after the other. So we just want to at least raise that with you tonight, if that's something you thought would be helpful to town meeting or not. But that would be important, again, if you did want to move them, that you take that position tonight. So I draft in the right order.
Well, I think that makes a lot of sense.
As do I. I think being able to present a picture of all the capital expenses in as close together as can is is a sensible thing to do.
So then I would say let's move articles,
12.
yep, 12. Is it just 12? They usually have two.
Well, it's 13, it would be
12 and
13.
13,
Right.
right? So we should move that because one is how you're gonna pay for it.
Yep.
So,
So after,
we-
what is after 5?
That's correct.
right, so we should put those after 5. And then the question is, do we want to, do we do all the consent agendas together or do we keep them broken up like the way we see it here?
Well, I think Dave was talking about make sure when we put the consent agendas that we do it on the vote,
Right.
the ones that have 50% requirement versus 2/3.
No, I got that, but see how they're clumped together? So does it make sense to still do the financial budgets and articles, then the zoning budgets, and within these categories, if there's a consent agenda, to leave it as is?
Madam Chair, it may make sense for now to leave it as is because
Okay,
we've identified these as possible consent agenda items, but as you get closer to town meeting, you may feel otherwise that one or two of them should just be handled, standalone. So right now, our structure, we've tried to organize the warrant in a logical way. Financial articles, planning articles, bylaw articles, and sort of group them that way. And I think then you can always make the decision later on about which may fit in the consent. And we'll handle that through the motion if I don't want to speak to
Okay.
the moderator, but I think that's how we would handle it. We'd write the motion in such a way to include any articles you thought should be in the consent warrant.
okay, all right, that makes sense. In the past, one of the things we've done is we've looked at some of the special warrant articles to determine what population in Dover this article may impact the most. But so to be honest, that citizens petition on the sidewalk is going to be right towards the end of town meeting, but I haven't really heard anything about this so far. So does it make sense to keep that there? I think the planning board articles are important to have, where they are. But does anybody have an opinion about the citizens petition and where it's being placed right now?
So if I follow your train of thought, Robin, I mean, it seems to me that it would go up to about position 20. It would go in front of the general bylaw articles.
Right,
I don't know if it'd be 22 or not, but in that,
right. But I don't know enough about.
I don't know
about
either.
this.
This is not a lot of information.
So, Robin, I understand what you're doing, and what we've tried to do in the past is to accommodate people at town meeting who, instead of if they were the demographic that maybe needs to be home after certain hours, we handle their business earlier in the evening. And then what that did in the past couple of meetings is it led to people leaving the meeting and then being up against a voting quorum. So for all the good that we've tried to do, we might have inadvertently done ourselves a disservice by doing these things. So my feeling is, in this particular one, it is not any demographics. It's not so demographic specific that we would need to change it. And
Okay,
I would defer the judgment on that to David and to Jim to see what their thought is.
Quorum did come to my mind immediately, John. That
Great
might be
minds.
the other one is if we put that early on and it votes one way, the meeting may want to reconsider it with
exactly. That's the risk.
later in the evening.
Well, that's been the risk the past 3 meetings, which has happened to the reconsideration in only one measure that came back for reconsideration, and then won on the reconsideration by 1 vote. So
Okay,
All right, so then what I would say is, I think this order works.
May I, excuse me, Madam Chair?
Sure.
Would it be possible to do the ADU bylaw after the floodplain bylaw? In other words, reverse 18 and 19?
I don't have an issue with that.
yeah, sounds okay. John?
I'm fine. Any particular reason, Carol?
We've just gotten some new data today, actually, on the floodplain, the impact of the floodplain on households. It's only 30 or 40 households in Dover that are actually in the floodplain. So I think it's going to be hopefully a very quick article. So I'd just like to get it out of the way.
From your lips to God's ears.
Jim's there praying right now.
Saw him earlier.
So the only thing left, we haven't resolved 17.
At our meeting, we heard from Carl that there might be a reason that it needs to go in this town meeting versus the town meeting to vote on the Carroll Center next. Is there any more information that you could share with everyone, Carl?
Nothing that would help you make a decision. I've talked to the Park and Rec director, who's talked with his chairman. They are not prepared to have it withdrawn, to ask you at this point to have it withdrawn. We have a call set up for Thursday with town council so that we understand if it does go forward at town meeting. I want to make sure I understand how the motion would work, and make sure I write the article correctly. But again, that's Thursday. But at this point, the Park and Recreation Committee would like to keep it on the warrant.
But what is the ask?
The ask is for a sum of money for 4 items that they would like included as part of the community center, Carroll Community Center project. A playground, a basketball court on the outside, and on the inside, a room partition for one room, a large room, and
Well, the room partition is in the room partition is in the construction documents, as I understand it. So what's the?
Right, but how can you vote on something? I mean, there's a risk the community center doesn't happen.
There is nothing to vote on. We don't have a project.
Right, that's the issue that I have with this. I don't have an issue that they want a warrant article, but it makes sense to be at the meeting when we're voting on the Carroll Community Center.
Assuming that it passes.
Right.
So I don't get it. We don't, and by the same token, if they want something, so there's a question here that needs to be clarified. The building committee has worked through all of the sort of opportunities that were identified back in November and have gone through another exhaustive exercise to decide what should be in the building and in the construction documents and what should be left for post-construction, right? So there were a number of things that were talked about, and I think this is going to be the focus of the February 9th meeting. That if you're doing the construction, it makes sense to do X, Y, and Z in the internal construction of the community center. If there are things that could be done subsequent to the building to refurbishing Carroll and putting in the new building, then that could be, it wouldn't be done, but the funding question would be outside the construction documents. And so for example, what do you call it? The soft floor and the separation in the upstairs, sort of recreation space room. People decided that it had to be, the only time to do it and do it properly was during construction. The outside basketball court you could do subsequently. It didn't have to be in the construction documents. And I don't know what else they were sort of talking about. But again, I don't know how you ask the town to vote money for something that doesn't exist yet. And that won't exist for another year. And it just seems, I don't know, I just don't understand it. And if it's our responsibility and we're not asking them not to do it, we're asking them to do it at the next meeting. Jim?
Yeah, I was wondering, I wonder if anybody knows what the legal effect is of having an appropriation for something that is dependent on a subsequent event. I've never run across this before, but I agree with you, Bob. It does seem to be very odd. And, for example, if the community center does not pass, is the town still required to expend that money that's been voted at town meeting? I guess that would be one of the questions, Carl, for town council.
Sure, I agree. I'm pretty sure the answer to that is no, just based on my experience. But that is one of the items we'll talk with town council about on Thursday.
Wouldn't it be subject to the wording of the warrant? So if the warrant was worded that this would take place in conjunction with, or something along that line, the construction of the community center?
Again, that's something I want to have a discussion with town council, exactly how we should word the warrant.
But you better make sure it's the right stuff too, Carl, right?
Yeah, I understand.
Well, how can we determine what the warrant is? I mean, it needs to be really broad because you haven't finalized the bid documents yet, right? So we don't
haven't
even
sent
know.
the bid documents out yet.
Right, so we don't even know what's included. Also, the question I have, is this a playground at the community center? Because there seems to be some confusion as to whether the playground ask is at the community center or at Carroll Park.
Well, there's already a basketball court at Carroll Park.
Well, I'm talking about the playground that's part of this ask. I know the basketball court was part of the community center.
Outdoor recreation space, but they do have a basketball court at Carroll Park and it's lighted.
Right.
So it's seemingly redundant, but we won't go there. So I mean, I just think it doesn't belong here. I just think I don't see how you appropriate money for something that doesn't exist, the contract that hasn't been signed.
Well, we're not experts. I think these are really good questions. I think Carl's doing the right thing. Jim's question is spot on. We need legal counsel to tell us if we can even do this, because it's hard to understand how you can appropriate funds for a project that may not itself get appropriated. So nobody's saying you can't have this warrant article. We're just saying it belongs in the town meeting in June.
The June town meeting, yep.
But Robin, what you're asking for is a motion so we can approve as amended and get the sequence of the numbers correct. Because
Right.
from what
Right, and I mean, we can always withdraw. There's warrant articles are always withdrawn.
I'm just trying to keep you on track for this.
Right.
So that's
So-
right, John. That's a good point. So motion
and
was
so-
as, as amended, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, so then I would move to amend the order of the town meeting warrant articles as discussed and amended.
Second,
All in favor? Aye, Robin Hunter.
I, Bob Springett.
John Jeffries. And I wrote down, Carol, I wrote down the numbers, but I don't think I got them correctly. I think there was one missing.
Well, let's hope
How'd you want?
Carl got them right.
So the changes, Mr. Jeffries, that I have is following what's on the list currently for Article 5, the capital budget is then going to be followed by
12 and 13.
12 and 13.
Got that.
And then we're going to reverse the order of the two planning board articles, 18 and 19. So the
Yep.
floodplain will come first
Got it.
and then the ADU.
Okay.
And what's currently 21 on the list has been withdrawn, so that will come off the list. The stormwater bylaw.
Yep.
Well, we just spent 31 minutes and we will save ourselves exactly 17 minutes in town meeting. by doing all this.
More like 30 hours, depending.
Right.
I think it's at least an hour we just saved, John.
So I'm betting the under, you're betting the over.
I think we at least saved 31 minutes.
Oh, God, yes. Okay.
We should get paid for the hours that in minutes.
Okay,
that-
John, you're wasting hours now.
Oh,
Let's
yeah,
let's
I've
move
been-
on to item number
I was the one
1.3.
that moved you along. Oh, the thanks I get.
So the next item is the Board of Selectmen Membership Size Committee. And Bob, you're going to make a recommendation for the final member to the group.
Yeah. So the background here is we made sure that everybody who raised their hand is interest for the committee got to speak to a selectman. That's all been done. I mean, really, it was kind of fun talking to all the people and getting a sense. And at the end of the day, I would like to recommend Rich Forte. He has a lot of experience with Dover, and that's really one of the more important aspects. I worked with him on the 2018-2019 Carroll project, and I know he attempts to be neutral. He's a good member of a committee. He's collaborative, and he's analytical. And again, in terms of why, when you're talking about looking at the government, it's a serious business. Having somebody with knowledge of how it worked and how it works is quite important. And so I strongly recommend that we appoint Rich Forte as the 7th member of the 3 to 5 committee.
You know, the other unique thing about him is he grew up in Dover.
Yeah.
So,
And I think it rounds it out.
right. You know, again, it's an excellent committee. It has a lot. It's very diverse. I think we have all the various segments of the Dover population represented. And, you know, with the help of a consultant, I think this group will be able to arrive at a good recommendation to the Board of Selectmen.
Yep. Just likely won't be quick.
Right. So, John, do you have any comments?
No, I think this is a very good solution, and I agreed with how we discussed last week. I don't think we need to rehash how we got to this spot, but this is a good conclusion to this. And as Bob just said, this is the beginning. There's
Right.
a lot of work to do, and all the things that we've been talking about in the capital budget and all the areas that we are addressing currently. These are all going to be very specific, interesting and deep conversations for this group.
Right. So I think I will move to appoint Rich Forte to the Board of Selectmen Membership Size Study Committee. Bob, you gotta find an acronym for this.
I call it 3 to 5.
First, 2023.
Second,
All in favor? Aye. Robin Hunter.
I, Bob Springett.
John Jeffries.
And I would like to thank everybody that volunteered for this committee. We really appreciate your willingness to serve on the committee. And we hope that we will find a position for you or another interesting committee that you would like to serve on in the future, because I think the three of us can honestly say that it is rewarding being part of the community and serving on these committees.
Well, I agree with all that, Robin, and we have screening committees coming up. We have screening committees for several different positions coming up. We've got the HAIL task force, which is ongoing and expanding, and the communications process of the HAIL. There's lots of things that we are going to be looking for expertise and help with committees on. So there are lots of committee assignments, and I think just thinking through all these things coming up, I literally would have a place for everyone who's raised their hand so far.
Maybe even twice the number.
Well, we could probably put them on two committees. So speaking of committees and volunteers, this is a very nice segue into our item number 1.4. And I will be appointing Jeffrey Saunter. Did I pronounce your name right, Jeffrey? Sauter? You're on mute.
Mute.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
We
Yes.
can. Is it Sauter?
Yes, it's Sauter, S-A-U-T-E-R,
Okay.
7 Juniper Lane.
So I would, it's to appoint Jeffrey Sauter to the Dover Historical Commission, and Steve Kruskal, the chair of the Historical Commission, requested that we appoint Mr. Sauter to an unfilled position on the Dover Historical Society. I gather from his note to us that the committee met with you and they discussed your candidacy, and they are very excited to get you on board. So, again, we really appreciate all the volunteers and appreciate you stepping up. Would you like to tell us what intrigues you about being part of this committee?
Oh, well, I got on tonight. I wasn't told that I had to be at this meeting,
Okay.
but I thought I should be in case anybody had any questions. I'm retired now. I've been retired about 2.5 years, and an engineer, actually a sales engineer, which I was intrigued by your earlier conversation because I spent 30 years selling expensive commercial HVAC equipment and got training as a certified energy manager to go into an existing building and evaluate an HVAC system, which has nothing to do with the historical commission.
But we may have a consulting role for you on capital budgets.
But you have my number. I am a certified energy manager, which is kind of an interesting, I've been retired for a while, but I still have that knowledge. But because of the wonderful world of computers that we live in, a few years ago, I started researching my family's past, and I discovered completely by accident that one of the 3 men that came to Dover in 1690 and settled west of Wilsondale was my 7th great grandfather, Thomas Battle. And he owned the farm, which is right where, the Saw and picnic grounds are.
Right.
And at one time he owned all the land from Claybrook Road to the Medfield Town Line. And then of course it all got broken up, but that's got me very interested in town. I spent a lot of time at Highland polishing off graves to see who all these people were. But I have a real serious interest in trying to maintain the historic essence of the community. I belong to the Historical Society. I'm a docent at the Solid Museum. So that's probably all you need to know, I guess.
Well, that's a wonderful story, and I do again, appreciate it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move to appoint Jeffrey Sauter to the Dover Historical Commission for a term ending on June 30th, 2025.
Second.
All in favor? I, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springett.
Hi, John Jeffries.
And we really appreciate your attending this meeting. And I think Barry Goldman's going to be in touch with you.
Well, I assume you have my number. Did Steve give that to you, or I can get in
Well,
touch with you?
we have ways of getting it.
I'm
so
sure.
we'll-
No, Felicia
we'll be
knows how to
able
get in touch with me.
contact.
I've been in touch with Felicia on a number of subjects. So thank you very much, Madam
Thanks.
Chair, and I'll get offline and mute myself again. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we are rolling right along. Item 1.5, and that is the Board of Selectmen updates. So Bob, I guess there's even agenda items here. So the first one of the items over here is to discuss the community center rebidding project. So Bob, do you want to do that first?
Sure. So I mean, the timeline was fairly well laid out. January was to do the pre-qualification bids and then send out the qualification bids, and that's supposed to come back tomorrow. So that's what's been going on. And then once people review the materials and then et cetera, they ultimately would pick the people to whom they would send out the construction documents. In the background, all the work has been going on to incorporate in the construction documents the modifications that we had been discussing for the latter part of, back in September, October, November. And that'll be discussed tomorrow night with the building committee, and then on the 9th with us. And everybody on the architects and the OPM, et cetera, that they want to make sure that everybody is fully aligned before they send out the construction documents. So those couple of things will be important. So they're on schedule.
All right.
So before we get into the second item, I was talking with Carl, and one of the things that is as clear as the nose on my face to me is the need for someone to bring somebody in to help us with the communications on the various and sundry projects. And I think Carl is going to do outreach on that. Could you just give me an update on that, Carl?
Yeah, there's not much to add. You and I've talked, and I've had a similar conversation with Mr. Jeffries. It's on the list, so to speak, but the list is pretty long these days.
So Carl, is it something one of us can help with, contacting this person?
So what I explained to your two colleagues is, they gave me actually the name of they both gave me the same person to contact, which
makes it easier.
Makes it easier, but I want to make sure that when I need to talk to them, because I can't create more work for the staff.
Right.
It needs to be somebody who has at least a general understanding of how government works, how town works, what our limited resources are here in Dover. I agree, we need this type of help, but we need it from the right, whether it's a firm or individual. And like I said, I have my plate's been full on a couple of other things that are very time sensitive these days, but I am planning to reach out to the individual that has been recommended to me.
Is there any way, Carl, that we can help? Because as Robin just asked, my pain point may be a bit different from Bob's, but maybe similar in the sense of, and I was about to give this to you coming up in this segment anyway, the Hale report And the hail report is, in best case, fragmented. And I and Amy Moot, we're trying to keep a lot of balls in the air. And what we're finding, and what I'm finding, is the common denominator in all the directionality of where the hail movement is going, which may be similar to what Bob is reporting in Carroll and the other things, is it's missing. There's nobody in the town hall right now to go to say, please do this, please do that, please do this, connect with that person, give this person this particular piece of information or the update, or connect with DA and Rob Warren and connect the dots on 1, 2, and 3. So the frustrating part for me is the sand is slipping through the hourglass. We are literally, 6 weeks, we're 3 weeks away from town caucus. So can we, as the Board of Selectmen, help you appropriate money for a consultant, and whether the person or the firm, as you just described, needs to be tweaked or added to? Can we do it sequentially?
I don't know yet. I honestly think it's premature on Hale, because you haven't had a presentation on the CR that's being negotiated.
Right.
So
Right.
I think it's premature to start talking about the project when the board hasn't had the presentation itself.
Right.
And our schedule right now that we worked out with Westwood, Hale, and the trustees is to have a document that can be brought to the Board of Selectmen by March 1st, so that we can then bring it to other boards and committees who will want to weigh in on and comment. So we have a really tight document by the time, hopefully late spring. But I think until you've seen it, until you're ready to sort of say, okay, you can discuss this publicly, it's premature to sort of go much beyond that.
I understand the problem. The problem that we're facing is the events and the people that make up the core of a lot of these groups and these constituents. They get together at very specific times, like the Hunt Club meets for a specific number of time. The Council on Aging meets a specific number of times. The Dover Legion, all the various constituents that we go to when we're looking at vetting issues that are going to come up at town meeting, all these various groups say to us, even the library people say to us, we have these days that are open where these people are going to be here. You've got to give us the content that we need to talk about the things at town meeting, or the things in the warrant, or the things at the caucus, right? So the longer we wait, we miss those opportunities. And I do hear what you're saying, Carl, with regards to the CR, but there's more to it than just the CR. There's the momentum behind spreading the communication of this process and other processes. So it's not just Hale. It's what we were talking about earlier, the difference between having an item on a warrant that may not even be something people should focus on because it's going to be on a different warrant. So we're trying to keep all these balls in the air and have somebody to help us. Bob, would you add anything to that?
So what we're looking at is someone who knows how to communicate and how to use the media to get messages out. They don't need to know about the town, or they don't need to have municipal experience. This is about messaging. And right now we're using Ruth. to do a lot of the work. The Board of Selectmen, I can't, I need to be able to hand off. Somebody has to work with the Board of Selectmen to put together a Board of Selectmen page or a town meeting page and
Well,
get
we
the
need, I
messaging.
mean, the town meeting page, as soon as the warrant is.
Yeah, but somebody has to
approved,
do
we're
that
gonna
work.
need
Right
that.
now, we're relying on Ruth and we're relying on Felicia. So we need this particular individual is well steeped in communicating. So I think this is a time where you move. If you like the person, if the person has the skill set, we take the risk. And we set them up with Ruth and with Felicia, and they work through the messaging with the sponsors of the various messages. We can't wait. This is not one of those things. I mean, we're already in, tomorrow's February. We need to move.
So how do we do it? Can we hire somebody? We obviously have enough money. We've got plenty of money because we're not paying a lot of people. So we have a lot of open spaces. So we literally have money in the budget. How do we?
Right, but I think it's just Carl needs time to be able to call this person and just make sure, evaluate that the person has the right skill set, that they can actually help and won't create more work in the long run. I think that's what I heard Carl say.
Yeah, but the thing we don't have is time. I mean, time is, like I said, which if it happens next week, Monday, Tuesday, that's fine. It's a 15-minute or 30 minutes to interview the person and make a decision. And the guy's resume is impressive. I mean, this is a very senior guy from major corporations.
Sure. I hear you. You don't you're preaching to the choir. Right now we're extremely stretched in terms of staff, administrative staff in the building. So I'll move on it, but again, we're juggling a number of things, as you know. There's a number of positions that are vacant, and in the interim, people we have are not full-time. So it's a real issue that it's.
Yeah, agreed. We
a
absolutely
balancing
agree.
act.
Yeah, and Carl, please, we don't want to put another rock in your backpack. We want to take one out, and I want to find the most effective way to do that. This is a absolute black hole for us because, as we've all said in various different ways, we just don't have somebody to do this. And the idea that, Ruth Townsend, as wonderful as she is, she's calling us while she's on vacation in London to ask us for information that's due the next day.
Well, I think she's back.
Well,
She's back now. Yeah.
That was
We're
last
on the
week.
same time zone now.
Yeah. But, for me to spend 2 hours and Amy Moot to spend 2 hours, and then she's got to spend another 20 minutes editing the things that I spent, 2 hours on, or the grumpy editor has got to edit the things that I spent 2 hours on. It's,
No, you're right, but it's somebody has to give whoever the person is the content.
yeah.
And that's what I'm concerned about, is who's going to provide the content to the individual we bring on.
Right.
So we have to think that through. Just having a body come in is only a piece of the
Again,
puzzle.
I mean, if we're sitting here saying things like, we're going to put something up on the webpage for a town meeting, and we're going to ask sponsors of petitions to write articles and do that kind of stuff and get it up on the town website. Well, who's going to do that work? Not Ruth, not you, not me. We need somebody to do that work. That letter that you wrote is going to create content. I create content. John creates content. Robin creates content. Somebody has to be the manager of that content. And so, again, this is something that the person did. That's what his job was. It's not like we're pulling Barry in and saying, you know, be an English second language guy.
Sure, I understand.
So, I don't think
hear
Carl
you.
disagrees,
I
right?
know, but we've had this conversation. I've personally had this conversation for a heck of a long time. Not with predating Carl. It needs to get done now.
So do we need a motion? I don't think we've needed a motion in the past to do
No,
this.
we don't need a motion. It's an action item and we all know what needs to happen.
Okay.
So why don't we move on to the other thing, which will make Carl very happy. It's to get the town administrator search committee off and running. You both should have received a doodle poll from Bernie Lynch. And I hope you responded to set up meetings. They're trying to get input already so they can hit the ground running from the three of us. And they also reached out to some committees. Did you both receive the doodle poll? It came in on Sunday morning.
I didn't
No.
see it.
I did not receive the doodle poll. I received Bernie's email on Sunday morning, and then I received your reply to Bernie's email, but I did
There's
not.
a doodle poll in Ernie's email.
Bernie's.
So,
You said
did
Ernie.
you receive Bernie's email? Bob?
Did I? Yes, but I didn't see the link or whatever it is.
So I'm the only one that saw the doodle poll. All
Yeah.
right. Well, it's a very nice thing. It shows you Bernie's calendar and you pick dates that work for you. And his calendar's already free. And then you submit that form and they get back to you almost immediately and tell you which day they set up. So I am meeting with him tomorrow, so I will let him know that he should send out a new email to both of you.
Well, I probably still have the other one, but I'll take a look.
Okay.
That'd be great. Thank you.
So I
So
did
what-
think that, go ahead.
So what we do need to do here, because time is of the essence and the community paradigm is already moving 5 steps ahead of us. So, we need to designate a liaison and so that we can pull together the screening committee, because as soon as the work, which entails the Board of Selectmen and input from committees, just like we did last time, as soon as you pull together this profile, we're going to go out immediately and post the job and get candidates. And that's when the work for the screening committee starts.
Okay, I had thought at one point in time that we had discussed meeting with the selected consultant as a Board of Selectmen to go over our views of what we need in a candidate. And I
Right.
see in the material that there is the board has provided the candidate profile, but I don't know where that came from.
That came from the last recruitment.
Yeah, this
Okay,
is the last thingy.
Okay, so my problem is that it reflects where we were 5 years ago or 4 years ago. And
But Bob, this isn't the profile. This is just what we did last time.
Yeah, I think Bob, and that's what Bob's saying.
Right. It's just,
we were
I
gonna get
think
together with
Carl
people.
put it in here for information. The way Bernie, I mean, I just saw his email. I thought what we were gonna do today was figure out a liaison, and the liaison would talk to Bernie and set out a schedule. This is just what we did last time. So what he did is they reached out to each of us individually as well to have a private conversation
Right.
about what we think is needed. And that's exactly what the Collins group did as well. And
right,
then they pulled it all together and found commonalities and things that were very different. And they sorted it. And that's when we all had a meeting with them together.
All right,
So I would envision the exact same thing happening again.
okay, so then I not that I misunderstood, but I was asked the question, do I think the board should get together with the consultant before they start the process? And I said, yes. That was to the prior town administrator. And so I thought it made sense to get together, have the discussion. We could all hear, we could all comment, we could all debate. And in that way, shape or form, I would have hoped that we would have had a better chance at being aligned from the get-go. And so if that's not the way we're going to do it, we're going to do individuals.
Bob, we have not picked a liaison. They're just trying to move quickly.
Yeah, I got
So-
it, Robin, but if
So,
pick
you know, the thing is, either way works. They can meet with us individually before, so we can all in private have thought about it and tell them what we think is necessary. Then they can take what we've said, find common ground and find things that are very different and use that as a basis of a conversation for the three of us.
as long as, yeah, which you're right. You could do it before, you could do it after. And,
Right. And in a way, doing it before, it's your ideas. You don't, it's what you truly think without listening to the ideas of others.
maybe we could agree to disagree.
But
But I
at the
mean,
end
I
of the
think-
day, you're gonna hear what everybody else had to say and still discuss it.
All I'm saying, so what is the red highlighted items in this mission statement?
Well,
Because-
this is just the draft of what we did last time, just to remind us how we set it up. And then the red basically represented the important things that we had, that we outlined in the search last time. This
Right.
is just a reminder.
Right, okay, so then, because what we did last time has no relevance to what we need to do this time.
The process is the same. What we're looking for may not be the same, but
Well, then I'm not sure this is helpful, right?
well, if it's not helpful to you, Bob, it isn't helpful.
But I don't know where this is going.
Bob, it's an informational document just to remind us all what we did last time. If you don't want to do it the same way, nobody's suggesting, two things are going on. One, the first thing is we need to pick a liaison so that the liaison can communicate with Community Paradigm and outline a schedule and a process. So because that hasn't happened and we expressed a sense of urgency to get started, Community Paradigm reached out to us,
Right,
each of us individually. So, debating on whether we like what's here or not, let's pick a liaison. The liaison can reach out to Community Paradigm and send out, what the next steps are. Personally, I don't have an issue with each of us till the next meeting, meet with Community Paradigm individually,
yep.
just so that we can move this process along.
Yeah, that's fine, Robin. Do you anticipate also us doing it together once the three of us have done it individually?
For the 19th time, yes.
Okay,
My thought
I'm
was
sorry.
that,
I wasn't sure
thought-
those first 18 were actually
right.
part of let's do it. Let's do it.
Right,
this way.
definitely. It's
Okay.
just a start.
Okay, got it. So I'm fine with that. What I would like to add to that is I went back to my notes and literally the book that we created last time. What was very helpful in preparation for this, I sent out to you both the way a screening committee should be, quote unquote, should be assembled. And I thought that was very helpful. We then all edited, we made some minor changes to it, but we essentially came out with this these are the parts of the community that should be represented in the screening committee. I would like to do that again, and then you two can edit it again, because I agree with Bob, it's changed. The parts of the community have evolved and changed over the 5 years, and I'd like to add some of the characteristics, if you will, of what the screening committee should look like. And we should also discuss, should the screening committee be 7 members, which I think it should be 7 members.
Right. I mean, I thought the screening committee last time was very representative of the community and did a
Agreed.
really good job working together.
Agreed. So I would like to do that part and get that part to you. I also think the member of the screening of the liaison committee should be Bob, because Bob is going to be the chair of the Board of Selectmen in 3 months. And that is going to be the time when all of this transition is going to be taking place. What do you think? What do you two think about that?
I don't have a preference. I mean, I am happy, since I did it last time, I am happy to do it again. I don't think you need to be chair to be head of this liaison.
Let me come in, Robin. Thanks, John. I'm going to put my chips on the table and say the person who did it last time, I'm going to ask to do it again. I've just got a couple of things coming on that may impact my availability. So I think I'd go, John. I think you're right about putting together a sort of the layout of a demographic. And Robin, if you're willing to do it, I'm happy to do that. I'm more than happy to nominate you for that position.
Yeah, and I'm happy to do it. And I have a call scheduled with Bernie tomorrow. So.
John, are you okay?
Totally okay. I just think, Robin, I didn't think you had the bandwidth to do it. I just thought with all the, with the teachers and, the union stuff and everything that's going on, and I just didn't think you'd have the bandwidth to do it. And that was.
There's no need to apologize. I'm happy to do this because I think the teachers' negotiations should be over when the heavy lifting for this starts. And I really expect Community Paradigm to do
Heavy lifting.
Heavy lifting.
I hope Bernie's listening, or at least watching.
Okay, so I'm going to move to appoint Robin Hunter as the Selectmen's liaison to the Town Administrative Search Committee. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
All in favor? Aye, Bob Springer.
Aye, John
Robin.
Jeffries. I think
Okay.
at the same time.
You have to say it now, Robin.
I, Robin Hunter, I accept. All
There.
right. And then I don't have any updates other than to remind the two of you to look at Bernie's doodle poll.
Yeah, I really forgot about that.
Well, I will only say that my update is going to be handled in executive session. So,
Okay.
Oh, sure, be that way, John.
Madam Chairman, would it be possible if we took a 5-minute recess? I know we're near the end of the agenda,
Yep,
but could we take a brief recess?
now or between meetings?
Well, if we thought we could get through the next piece really quickly, I'd be happy to do that and then take it between meetings.
All right, why don't you we'll take 5. We'll take a couple of minutes. We'll take a break
Okay.
now, right?
Appreciate it. Thank you.
So we can talk about the upcoming agendas.
okay. Are the dates on the upcoming agendas still the same?
So that I saw the 9th, right? That was just set up. And then the 16th was the normal one, right, Robin?
Right.
And then I'm assuming we're just following what we had agreed centuries ago. For the 2nd and 16th, it just seems to follow the bi-weekly.
I just went on and looked at what at what Carl has coming up on his last section. No wonder he wanted to take a break now. My
Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah, there's, we really have to be careful about workloads and capacity. So the meetings are good? The agendas look okay?
Right. I think we covered a lot of Carl's items, but just recruiting is going to take time.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm just looking at his project summary status in the packet, and wow, he's got a lot on. I'm just looking through this and looking at the time of each one of these items. It's a lot.
Yeah. Yes, it is. There is no question about that.
Well, should we bring in another part-time interim town administrator to job share?
Robin, one of the things that we have to discuss when Carl comes back is how much is Rick, the assistant town administrator interim, how much is how quickly can he get up to speed, and how much of this can he absorb?
Isn't he doing just HR?
No.
Carl's point is at some point you do swap the boat. So the argument on the communications guys, it's pretty isolated, almost like having a tech guy. It's pretty isolated, but if you're having somebody come in and get involved in the nuts and bolts, then you really do have to know. So if you could add capacity selectively, and I don't know how, he'd have to tell us how best to do that.
Well, you're right. In our businesses, we've all had outsourcing people come in to do just that.
Yeah.
The outsource people come in to take the load off your plate, not add to it. The good ones. The
But
bad
they
ones.
do, to Carl's point, it does take up time.
Yeah.
Well, that's why who you pick and what they do, you have to be very thoughtful about.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, Ruth's doing the work now. Ruth and Felicia.
Well, just some of the work, not all of them.
Thank you, Robin. You took the words right out of my mouth.
But I mean, on the communication side.
Yeah. And even that, it's just not fair to everybody involved that it's them doing it. You literally, your town clerk is not the person
Should not be doing this, right? So are we going to, are we looking at the Chris's old project chart? Is that where we're going?
Yeah. That's literally what I was scrolling through.
And is it prioritized?
Well, it's itemized. I don't know if
it's itemized, yes.
Well, I think recruitments are prioritized.
Yeah, so I think the last time treasurer collector, HR director, assistant town administrator. And town administrator, but obviously.
Thank you.
So
we're gonna turn it over to you.
Yeah, we looked at the upcoming calendar, agendas. Everybody was fine. And then we looked at your list of stuff, Carl, and we all had heart attacks.
All right, so just a few updates. So you already talked about the town administrator recruitment.
Right.
In terms of other recruitments, so last week we started the recruitment for the treasurer collector's position. So that's out there now. And I think it's around the 20th of March is our closing date for that recruitment. That will be a very challenging recruitment. And there's a number of communities that are also recruiting for a treasurer collector position. The HR director position, which was next on your list of priorities and mine as well. So since that's a new position, we're developing the position description, but I've already started to get the word out in the network that we'll be looking to recruit for that position. So even though we haven't advertised yet, I'm getting the word out about that. And then lastly will be the assistant town administrator position. We haven't started that process yet. In terms of, can I move on, or is there any
Yeah, that's fine.
questions about that?
It's okay. I'm okay.
Okay, in terms of the Hale Reservation, so I alluded to that a little earlier during the communications discussion. We are now meeting weekly, so we as representatives from Westwood, Dover, Hale, and the trustees, with a goal of getting to our boards of selectmen in both communities a draft CR by March 1st that you can then review. And if you're then comfortable with that going forward publicly, even though that may not be the final version, but starting to get public comment on it. We've sort of done, I'll say, the easy part of the CR, and now we're really on some of the more difficult aspects of it. And Westwood's piece is even more challenging than Dover's because most of the development takes place in Westwood. Most of the access happens through Westwood. So the impact on Westwood is greater than it is in Dover. So they have a lot of issues that they've put on the table that we're trying to work through. But like I say, we're meeting every week. Town council has seen the CR, has already provided a couple of dozen comments on it that we're working into the document. So I think it's in a good place in terms of moving forward. But just so you're aware, again, we're shooting for March 1st as our deadline. And then town communications, I put it on the list because I wanted to let you know I'm hearing what you're saying about town communications. I agree, it's a critical item to move on. And I just need a little time to do that. And I think that's it. You have the updated project list in your packet as well. And I've added all these items to the list so we don't lose sight of them. And I'll continue to update this document as well. And that's it.
So Carl, is Rick helping to take stuff off your plate?
He is, yes, he is, but Rick is also limited in his time, so I'm getting about 15 to 18 hours a week from Rick right now, and then he's had a long planned vacation coming up at the end of February, so I'll lose him for a couple of weeks, but
Is it
he's
worthwhile?
handling all the personnel stuff for me.
Right. Is it worthwhile trying to get somebody to another set of hands to try do the same thing, just to try take things off of your plate? Like, would it make sense to get another part-time
Assistant town
interim
administrator, yeah.
town administrator just to help, because you're buried? And
So the short answer is yes. The longer answer is I can't tell you how many names I went through asking people if they were available, and in most of the cases, those who were sort of still who were working and interested were already committed to another community.
okay.
So that's the challenge right now. So, and I have the sort of the list of people who are, have expressed interest in doing this are available. And, if somebody becomes, gets freed up because they finish in the, the community they're working, I'll jump on it. But I have not been able to identify another pair of hands to help out.
Is there a way of segmenting the work differently to help? I mean, I don't know enough about the ATA position to know. But I mean, is there work that you could delegate to someone if you just had a pair of competent hands?
So there is. So I've delegated a lot of the technology work that started when Dave Sullivan was here, to Mark Geloni, and he's been terrific, just terrific, taking that off my plate. A lot of the infrastructure work, you asked earlier about the Claybrook Road earmark, the Dover Bridge over the Charles River and all that. I've moved all that, the water project, the water study, I've moved all that over to Kevin, the DPW director, and he's taken that on. So the staff's been great when I've asked them, if I can shift things over to them and sort of taking on pieces of it. So I'm continuing to try to do that. Unfortunately, I haven't found somebody I can delegate the finance work I was doing to somebody else.
I hear Robin is very good at finance
So
work.
Carl, I actually have an out of the box idea. HR Gov, what was his name? Mike Gillette.
Yeah. Yep.
So he was available to do a search. Would he maybe be available to come in and help us out? I'm to do some TA, some finance work.
It's a good question. I know Mike well. I can let me give it some thought, and maybe I'll reach out to him and see if he has any interest. I don't know if you remember during your interview, but he was doing interim work when you interviewed.
Right. But he may also know people, or maybe the firm knows people, because
But
they
he
also
just
offer
made
help?
it right. It seemed like he had some bandwidth, which
It's a good question. And I can talk with him to see if either he has some bandwidth or he knows anybody that maybe I missed on the list.
Carl, in my world, I do have retired people who live in Dover who have bandwidth, but they have really strong finance background, really, really strong legal background, but they've never worked in a municipality before. Does it have to be somebody who's got municipal experience if they have deep domain knowledge in those areas?
Yes.
Okay. So let me come back. Does .gov, don't they do staffing or interim staffing?
They do, not a lot of it, very little in Massachusetts. Until Mike came into their fold, I don't think they were doing any in Massachusetts, or if it was very limited. So they're struggling with the same thing we are, trying to find people who can do interim work. But and I know the owner of the company, the principal, who originally was from Massachusetts, and she's done some consulting work for me when I was in my last community. But they're struggling just like we are.
Half the world is struggling now.
Yeah.
Well, let's just keep. Well, if you can identify the need, maybe we can identify some help.
Thank you.
And I think you're going to have to think outside the proverbial box. So, are we done?
Thank you. No, we
that's all
just
I
have
had.
the consent agenda.
I didn't see one.
No, there is no consent agenda. It's just executive session. So,
So we have to break.
right, so I move the board enter into executive session, not to return to open session for the purpose of conducting strategy sessions in preparation for collective bargaining negotiations with the Dover Police Association. Further, as chair, I declare that an open meeting discussion may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the town. So I'm going to take a roll call vote to enter into executive session, not to return to open session. I, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springett.
Hi, John Jeffries.
Okay, see you in
And-
5 minutes, I guess.
Yeah, right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Good
Thanks.
night.